This is Jody Trana with Chapter 5, Part 4 of Principles of Accounting. Today we're going to concentrate on journal entries related to transportation costs for a merchandising company. Remember that sometimes we're the buyer and sometimes we're the seller, but either way, the buyer or the seller must pay for the transportation costs to ship merchandise inventory. The purchase agreement will specify whether the shipping is FOB, which is freight on board, terms of FOB shipping point, or FOB destination. This determines when the title to the goods or the ownership transfers from the seller to the purchaser. And whoever has ownership pays for the freight. The graphic that you see here shows the differences between the FOB shipping point and the FOB destination. FOB shipping point is a situation in which the buyer takes ownership or title of the goods after the goods leave the seller's place of business or immediately at the point of shipping. In this situation, the buyer usually pays for the freight because they've taken ownership. They may also need to insure the goods at this point. FOB destination is a situation in which the buyer takes ownership or title of the goods at the delivery or the destination point. When this happens, the seller generally pays for the freight. When merchandisers are required to pay for shipping costs, these costs are classified as either freight in or freight out, depending on their direction. Let's talk about how we post freight when we're the purchaser. Here's an invoice you've seen many times from Southwest Electronics Direct. This invoice says FOB shipping point. Remember that the buyer takes ownership of the goods based on the FOB statement, the freight on board statement. So we're taking ownership at the point where the materials are shipped, at the seller's dock basically. So we will need to pay for the shipping to get it to our business location. Let's look at a journal entry for when FOB shipping point causes us, the buyer, to pay for the freight. In this transaction, SmartTouch Learning needs to pay $60 for freight charge on a June 30 purchase. We debit that directly to merchandise inventory to show the increase in costs of the merchandise, and we credit cash for $60 to show the payment. This shipping cost is also called freight in. Some sellers prefer to arrange for the shipping in order to have the best outcome of quality for their customers, but they pass these costs along to their customers. This is also FOB shipping point because the buyer takes the ownership of the goods based on the freight on board shipping point statement. So we will take ownership at the point where the materials are shipped, even though Southwest Electronics has arranged for the shipping. We will need to pay for the shipping that is included on this invoice. Here's a similar example where SmartTouch Learning has purchased merchandise, FOB shipping point, and the costs are included in the invoice. You can see that the merchandise inventory itself was $5,000 and the shipping costs were $400. So the total costs are included in the merchandise inventory debit of $5,400. That total amount also is credited to accounts payable because we need to pay that entire amount. Let's go ahead and look at what the journal entry would be when we pay this amount. Consider that we need to debit the entire accounts payable amount to wipe out that obligation from our balance sheet. So the full $5,400 is going to be debited. Let's say that we're in a 3% discount qualification and we want to take that discount. What do we take the discount on? We can only take the discount on merchandise inventory that we've taken possession of. That in this case is $5,000. If we'd returned $1,000 of merchandise inventory, we could only take the discount on what we kept, which would in that case be $4,000. We can't take a merchandise inventory discount on shipping costs. Those two things are unrelated. So we're going to take 3% of that full $5,000 of merchandise inventory as a discount. That is a credit to merchandise inventory because it reduces our merchandise inventory costs. And the net amount is the amount we pay in cash of $5,250. Now let's consider what the circumstances would be if we had purchased these materials from Southwest Electronics with an FOB destination agreement. Remember that FOB destination indicates that the buyer takes ownership of the goods based on the FOB freight on board statement of FOB destination. So we're taking ownership at the point where the materials reach their destination. That is our front doorstep. In this case, we will not be paying for shipping because we haven't taken ownership of the goods until they reached our location. Now let's look at the other side of things, when Smart Touch Learning sells goods. Talking about the sale of merchandise and the related shipping costs. Here we can see an invoice that Smart Touch Learning did that they issued to a customer for the purchase of 2 tablets. On this invoice, we've stated that the shipping is FOB shipping point. This means that the buyer takes ownership and responsibility of the materials at the original point of shipping. Since the buyer takes ownership basically at our dock this time, we won't be paying for any shipping on this, and we'll leave it up to the customer to arrange and pay for. If we stated, on the other hand, that the shipping is FOB destination, this means that the buyer takes ownership and responsibility of the materials once the materials arrive at their final destination, which is our customer's front door. With this agreement, we have the responsibility to pay for freight costs and insurance to protect and ship the product to our customer. When we ship goods to our customers, it's also called freight out. Remember that freight out is an expense, one in which the seller, in this case Smart Touch Learning, pays for the freight to ship goods to customers. Freight out is a delivery expense to the seller. Since delivery expense is an operating expense, we would debit delivery expense for the cost of the shipping and credit cash when we make that payment.